Hi guys, this is our last day of ELA review for the year. For tomorrow, for Friday, you're going to complete a reading challenge. It's posted on Canvas under Friday's module, and it's also in your packet. Today we are reviewing first-hand and second-hand accounts. So you need pages 25, 26, and 27 of your ELA packet in front of you. All right, let's get started. First-hand and second-hand accounts. So there's first-hand accounts over here and second-hand over here. Up here tells us the definition, and then down here is an example. So let's start with first-hand account. First-hand account. The account is told from someone who was actually at the event that he or she is writing about. Diaries and autobiographies are examples of first-hand accounts. So this is someone who is actually there witnessing the experience or witnessing the story and telling about it. They lived through it. Example. Excerpt, which means it's a piece from, it's not the whole thing, it's just part of, a first-hand account from a survivor on board the Titanic. The officers in charge of loading the boats were cool and masterful, preventing as far as possible of all disorder and enforcing the command to care for women and children first. When boat 13 was lowered to A deck to be loaded, I went to this deck. After 8 or 10 women had been placed aboard, no other women or children were within hearing to respond to all officer calls. A number of men then climbed over the rail onto the boat when someone pushed me from behind and shouted, "Get in, doctor." I climbed in, and in a few moments the boat was filled and orders were given to lower. All right, so this is the story of the doctor who actually lived through this experience. These are his own words, his own thoughts as a first-hand account. Second-hand account. This account is told from research. The event is being described by someone who was not there and did not experience it personally. So they did research about this event and now they're retelling the story, but they were not actually there to experience it. Informational books and textbooks are examples of second-hand accounts. Example, again, this is an excerpt from an informational article about the Titanic. So it's not told by someone who was there. It's just research about it, and it's an excerpt. So it's just a piece of the big article. When the officers on the Titanic realized the extent of the damage caused by the iceberg crash, they decided to begin loading the lifeboats. Due to poor planning, only 20 lifeboats were available on the Titanic. These lifeboats could only hold 1,178 passengers. There were over 2,000 passengers on board the Titanic. As a result of the lifeboat shortage, the decision was made to load the women and children first, if at all possible. If all the women and children in an area were safely aboard a lifeboat, men were allowed to board the lifeboats. So that's telling what happened, but not by someone who actually lived the experience or was there through the experience. They learned about it by reading about it and researching it, and now they're telling the story. Let's go to our passage and questions. Oh, that's the wrong one. Here we go. So over here we have two texts, text 1 and text 2. Each one is different, but they're about the same thing, just kind of like our examples. They were both about the Titanic, but one was a first-hand account and one was a second-hand account. And then we have our questions over here. So let's get started and read at the top our notes. Multiple accounts of the same event are two texts that describe or retell the same event. First-hand account. The account is told from someone who is actually at the event that he or she is writing about. Diaries and autobiographies are examples of first-hand accounts, so that's exactly what we saw on our anchor chart. Second-hand account, the account is told from research. The event is being described by someone who was not there and did not experience it personally. Examples include informational books and textbooks. Let's get started and read text 1. On July 7, 1912, Harry Houdini appeared in New York City. He was ready to perform a brand new trick. His plan was to escape from a crate that had been dropped into New York's East River. To make it even more challenging, the crate would be nailed shut and bound with a rope. Houdini wanted to perform the stunt on a city pier so that he'd have a bigger audience, but the police wouldn't allow it. Instead, Houdini rented a tugboat and invited some reporters along to publicize the feat. The tugboat puttered away from the dock, but it stayed close enough to the shore for spectators to watch. Houdini's hands and feet were bound in shackles. He was then placed in the crate, and it was nailed and roped shut. Lead bars were attached to the crate to ensure that it would sink, and it was cast into the river. Many gasped. However, they didn't have long to worry. After only 57 seconds, Houdini triumphantly popped into the surface. Text 2. It was a hot day, hotter than usual for July. I took a stroll down to the river. I was hoping there might be a breeze, but all I found was a commotion. Houdini was the word on everyone's lips, and a crowd was pressing toward the end of the pier as they tried to look out to the river. I'm tall, so I had a great view. Sure enough, there he was. I recognized him from magazines. I got there just in time to see him being put into a crate on a tugboat, only 100 or so feet out. His limbs were all shackled, but there wasn't an ounce of nerves on his face. He had this half smile, a look of total confidence. They sealed up the crate, and everyone cheered as they threw it into the river. Then everyone went totally silent. There wasn't a peep for what seemed like hours. Finally, I was sure he wasn't going to make it, and I was about to bow my head. Just then, there was a roar. His head popped up, and the crowd exploded. Jump over to our questions. Question 1. What is the shared event being described or retold by the two accounts? So what story is being told by text 1 and text 2? I will give you a couple minutes to answer it. All right, text 1. What is the shared event being described or retold by the two accounts? So I know in text 1, they're talking about this cool magic trick that Harry Houdini did. And in text 2, it's a guy telling me the story of him watching Harry Houdini do a magic trick. So the shared event is Houdini's trick of escaping from a closed crate that was dropped into the river. That's the part of each story that was the same. Okay? This whole thing was about Harry Houdini's trick, and so was this one. Question 2. Which account is a first-hand account and which account is a second-hand account? Explain how you know. Go ahead and give that one a shot. All right, which account is a first-hand account? So when I'm looking for a first-hand account, I'm looking for a story told by someone who was actually at the event or actually took part in the story. And that is text 2. So text 2 is a first-hand account. The writer describes his personal experience, his thoughts, his feelings, and actions from the day. The author also uses first-person pronouns such as I, me, and my. Those are huge clues to first-hand accounts because they're saying, I was there, I saw this, I felt this. They are telling you their own personal thoughts and feelings about the story. So text 2 is a first-hand account of the day that they don't say his name, but this person saw this magic trick happening. Which account is a second-hand account? Well, that leaves text 1. So text 1 is a second-hand account. We know this because the writer gives specific details about the time and place, but he wasn't actually there to experience the event. The writer identifies groups of people, like the audience and the police, but refers to them as they, and Houdini as he. He's not saying I saw this. He's just telling the story and what exactly happened, but wasn't actually there to witness it. Question 3. What is at least one detail that is the same between the two accounts? Give that one a try. All right, for number 3, there are a couple things that you could put. What is at least one detail that is the same? So in text 1 and text 2, you need to compare and find something that is the same in both texts. There are a couple things you could put. You could put that Houdini was in shackles and put into a crate because it talks about that in text 1 and text 2. You could say that the crate was dropped into the river because it talks about that in both texts. You could talk about how Houdini successfully escaped. In text 1, it says, however, they didn't have long to worry. After only 57 seconds, Houdini triumphantly popped to the surface. So that means he escaped from the crate. And down here it says, just then there was a roar. His head popped up and the crowd exploded. The crowds exploded because he escaped. So that's another thing that was the same between them. And then one of the other things you could put is that it happened in July. Because if you look in text 1 and text 2, the first sentence tells about when it happened. This one has the full date. Text 2 only has the month, but they both mention how they happened in July. So on July 7th, 1912, Harry Houdini appeared in New York City. Text 2 says, it was a hot day, hotter than usual for July. So they're both mentioning that this event happened in July. Number 4, what details are different between the two accounts? Give at least one detail in each account that is not in the other. So now we are contrasting. We are finding something different in each text. Text 1 versus text 2. Go ahead and try this one. All right, again, there are a couple of different things that you could put for this one because there are some things that are different in each of them, but here's what I came up with. I said that text 1 tells about what Houdini wanted to do, why he couldn't do it, and what he did instead. Text 1 gives more details about the time and place. It says New York City, New York's East River, July 7th, 1912, and 57 seconds. Text 1 says that the crate was nailed shut and roped and that lead bars were attached to the crate. So text 1 is giving a lot more details. When you are writing a secondhand account, most of the time you're able to provide a lot more details because you're researching from a bunch of different sources and pulling information from a bunch of different places, where a first-hand account is just your own personal story, what you are seeing and experiencing. If you didn't actually see them put the lead bars on the crate, you wouldn't know that that was happening, so you couldn't include that in the first-hand account. For text 2, it describes the feelings of anxiety in the audience, the height of the writer, the expression on Houdini's face right before he went into the crate. So those are some differences between text 1 and text 2. Hopefully you are really successful in answering these questions. I know you guys have been working so hard and I'm so proud of you, but we've officially made it through all of our ELA review. The last thing that you need to do is take the first-hand and second-hand accounts quick check on Canvas, and then I will look at that when you are done and see how we did. Make sure you click submit because I cannot see your responses unless you click submit. All right, so go ahead and pop over to Canvas, take that quick check, and then have fun with your reading challenge tomorrow. Pick whichever one you would like. I'm so excited to see what you come up with.